The storm hit harder than expected. Wind tore through the trees like it was searching for something. Rain hammered rooftops. But what really woke the neighborhood was the sound of spinning rotors. Low, close, angry. At exactly 2:17 a.m., a helicopter descended behind the cul-de-sac. Its searchlights cut through the fog like knives. A few porch lights flicked on. Curtains peeled open. Phones were raised to windows. That's when Judith Crane, president of the HO, stepped onto her porch with her bathrobe flapping like a judge's robe. She stared at the helicopter like it was a trespasser in her courtroom. Her eyes locked on the logo on the side, barely visible in the rain. She didn't recognize it. She didn't try to. Instead, she dialed 911. There's a helicopter landing in our neighborhood. Unauthorized. Possibly criminal. You better send someone fast. Inside the backyard, Noah Ridge pulled off his flight helmet and knelt beside a woman on a stretcher. She was barely conscious, lips blue, hands shaking. He checked her vitals and signaled to the medic crouched beside him. They had less than 6 minutes to stabilize her. She was in septic shock, and the nearest hospital refused to dispatch air support due to a clerical error. He didn't wait for permission. He never did. The rain soaked through his jacket as he opened the side panel of the chopper, grabbing the adrenaline and 4 bag. His fingers didn't shake, but his jaw was clenched tight. His eyes never left the woman's. Then came the red and blue lights, multiple cruisers pulling into the driveway. Engines still hot from speed. Officers jumped out, guns drawn. Step away from the helicopter. No, Noah didn't flinch. He secured the 4 into the woman's arm. The medic looked up, frozen. The patient's pulse dropped to 42. Noah knew that number. It was the same number he'd lost his wife at. He pressed harder on the chest pads, his voice low but urgent. Stay with me. Come on. From the street, Judith shouted over the police. That's the man. That's him. He's bringing dangerous equipment into our neighborhood. He's risking lives. An officer raised a megaphone. Sir, step away from the aircraft, or we will detain you. Noah stood slowly, hands raised. But then he reached behind the pilot's seat. Every officer's finger tensed on the trigger. The world held its breath. He pulled out a small oxygen tank, the kind used for pediatric emergencies. He set it beside the woman and checked her airway. You have 5 seconds, the officer shouted. The medic looked at Noah. They both knew she wouldn't survive if they stopped now. Noah stepped toward the officers. Calm. Rain dripping from his chin. His voice was gravel and ice. If you want me to let her die in front of you, say it again. For one long second, no one spoke. Even Judith hesitated. Then the patient let out a gasp. A weak, beautiful gasp. Her pulse climbed. 44, 47. 50. The medic whispered, We've got her. The rotor spun again. Judith stormed forward through the police. You're not getting away with this. But Noah wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He looked her in the eye, and his voice cut through the thunder. I didn't come here for your permission. And as the helicopter lifted into the air, the street flooded with sirens, suspicion, and something no one could name yet. But they'd feel it. Something was coming. And no one, not even Judith, was ready. The next morning, the neighborhood buzzed like it hadn't in years. Text chains exploded. Doorbell footage got passed around like wildfire. Everyone had an opinion, but only one voice dominated them all, Judith Crane. She printed 50 flyers by sunrise. Illegal aircraft activity in our community. She handed them out door to door with a forced smile and shaking hands. Her tone was calm, but behind her glasses, her eyes were frantic. She didn't just want the helicopter gone. She wanted control back. Across the street, Noah stood alone by the chopper. It was parked silently behind his house, blade still, as if it hadn't sliced through death hours earlier. His jacket was off. His hands were slick with engine grease. He wasn't fixing damage. He was preparing. Inside, his garage told a different story. It wasn't a workshop. It was a shrine. All metals. Medical equipment. A framed photo of a young woman holding a newborn in a military hospital. The woman who never made it home. Noah hadn't spoken to a neighbor in years. He wasn't here for community. He was here because the roof didn't leak and the rent was paid. He kept to himself. Until people started calling him names behind his back. Until Judith made him public enemy number one. His phone buzzed. One new message from the hospital. Last night's patient stabilized. Transferred. No credit given. He stared at the screen. That was always the deal. No name. No thanks. Just the next one. But this time, it wasn't going to be that simple. Judith stood at the edge of his lawn, snapping photos again. This time, she wasn't alone. A man in a gray jacket stood beside her, arms crossed, sunglasses on. They didn't wait for doorbells. They let paperwork talk. We have reports you're conducting unlicensed flight operations over residential zones. Noah wiped his hands, stared at the man, then at Judith. He didn't answer. You'll need to ground that aircraft until we complete our review. Judith smiled like she'd won something. Noah didn't blink. That evening, a different knock. Quiet one. Anna, the woman from 3 houses down, stood there, holding a pie wrapped in foil. Her son, barely 10, stood behind her. We know what you did last night. That woman would have died if it weren't for you. Noah opened the door wider. She stepped in. You don't have to hide, she said. Not from us. He didn't answer. He just stared at the floor, then the ceiling. Then he pointed to a small corner of the garage where an old and used baby stroller sat under a tarp. Anna didn't press. She just nodded and left the pie on the counter. But across the street, Judith watched everything from behind her blinds. Her jaw tightened. She couldn't control the sky, but she would control the ground. She filed an official complaint that night, sent it to the HOA board, the city council, and the FAA. Noah Ridge is a liability. He must be removed. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that a child 3 counties over was about to have a seizure in his sleep, and that the only reason he'd live was because Noah had already mapped the fastest air route to the nearest treatment center. The fight wasn't about property lines anymore. It was about time. And who had the right to save it? The HOA meeting was called on short notice. Judith made sure every chair was filled, every rulebook highlighted. She stood at the front like a trial attorney, her voice clipped and precise. Behind her, a projector displayed blurry images of Noah's helicopter landing at night, taken from shaky phone cameras. This is not a debate, she began. This is a security crisis. Some neighbors nodded. Others looked uneasy. The footage was dramatic, sure, but none of them really knew what they were looking at. Just like Noah's, a man doing something they didn't understand. Noah sat in the back, silent, still, arms folded. He didn't flinch, didn't speak, didn't even look up. He doesn't have the permits. He operates after hours. He brings strangers into our neighborhood in critical condition. This is not a hospital zone. It's a violation of every HOA ordinance. Anna stood up. Her voice cracked at first, but then grew stronger. Do you hear yourselves? He's saving people. Not stealing packages. Not throwing parties. He's saving lives. Judith interrupted. That's not his job. That's not our concern. Anna looked around the room. Then whose concern is it? Before anyone could respond, a sound cut through the debate, a sharp, short cry. It came from the back row. Anna's son, Eli, collapsed to the floor. His limbs jerked violently, his mouth clenched. Panic erupted. Someone screamed. Someone else fumbled for a phone. Seizure. Anna dropped to her knees, trying to hold him steady. Her voice cracked into broken pleas. Call an ambulance. Call now. Judith froze. The room dissolved into chaos. But Noah was already moving. Fast. Precise. He knelt beside Eli, placed 2 fingers under his jaw, then gently shifted his head. His eyes locked onto Anna's. He needs transport. No. There was no time to wait. Noah scooped Eli into his arms and ran. Out the door. Across the street. Toward the backyard helipad. The rotor was already spinning. The blades cut through the early evening air like they'd never stopped. Judith came charging out of the HOA building, shouting like it would stop something. But this wasn't her world anymore. Then she did the unthinkable. She jumped into her SUV, pulled it forward, and parked it across the helipad. "You're not leaving," she screamed. "Not without clearance." Noah stood there, child in his arms, rain beginning to fall again. The wind from the blades whipped around them. The medic inside the helicopter gave a thumbs up. "Systems ready." Noah didn't blink. He didn't argue. He walked around the SUV like it wasn't there, climbed the side of the chopper with Eli still in his arms, and disappeared inside. The engine roared. The landing skids rocked. The blades spun faster. Police arrived again, too late to stop it. Judith screamed at them, demanding they arrest someone, anyone. But no one moved. The helicopter lifted, just inches above the SUV roof. The downblast shattered Judith's side mirror. She ducked. The chopper rose higher, disappearing into the clouds. Inside the aircraft, Eli's heartbeat stabilized. His limbs stopped twitching. He opened his eyes. Noah nodded once, then turned back to the controls. Back on the ground, silence. Judith stood in the street, her car lights still on, hair wild, lips trembling. "He broke the law," she whispered. "I'll make sure he never flies again." But the people around her didn't cheer this time. They didn't nod. They just watched the sky and wondered who would have saved that boy if the rules had one. And somewhere in the air above, Noah whispered a silent promise into the storm. "You'll make it, kid. I won't lose another one." The fallout was immediate. By morning, the HOA inbox was flooded with messages, some furious, some shaken, but all demanding answers. Local news picked up the footage. Headlines twisted it into chaos. "Unlicensed pilot defies HOA. Child saved in emergency flight." Judith didn't sleep. She paced her living room like it was a courtroom, every window blind closed, every light on. She replayed the videos again and again, looking for something, anything that made her feel right. He's reckless. He's dangerous. He's not supposed to be here. Her voice echoed in the empty house, but there was no one to argue back. Just shadows and headlines. Meanwhile, Noah stood alone on a nearby ridge, just past the tree line. The helicopter was hidden, covered in camo netting. He watched the sky, not to fly, but to think. He'd once been a combat medic in the Air Force. Flew more night rescues than he could count. There were two rules: stabilize and extract. Fast, silent, no glory, no delay. But none of that mattered here. Because now, a civilian committee had more power than triage. Anna arrived quietly, hands in her coat, a folded letter in her pocket. "Eli's fine," she said. "Back home. Sleeping." He asked if the helicopter would come visit him. Noah didn't smile. He just nodded. She handed him the letter. "I went to the HOA this morning. They're voting to ban you. Not just the flights, everything. If you stay, they'll sue." Judith's already filed an injunction with the city. Noah opened the envelope. It wasn't from Anna. It was from the FAA. Unregistered flight logs. Unauthorized medevac activity. Potential suspension of license. The weight of it hit like turbulence. Not just the fight here, but the fight everywhere. Anna placed a hand on his arm. "You don't have to prove anything to her. You've already proven it to us." But the words didn't reach him. Not all the way. His eyes stayed locked on the letter. Not in fear, in resolve. That night, Judith held a private meeting with a real estate agent. "How fast can we move him out?" "Depends," the agent said. "He owns the property outright." Judith's lips tightened. "Then we make it unbearable." The next day, the warnings came in rapid fire. Noise complaints, parking violations, a fire hazard citation because of a power strip in his garage. Noah walked out to find his mailbox chained shut. His garbage cans missing. A sign on his fence, "Unsafe for children." But still, he said nothing. He fixed the mailbox, took the trash to a nearby station, replaced the sign with a simple word painted in bold red: "Hope." And then came the call. A storm had knocked power out in 3 towns. One patient, elderly, heart failure, trapped without oxygen, needed extraction fast. No ambulance could reach her in time. The request came through unofficial. A nurse who knew his reputation. A whisper. A plea. Noah stared at the message. This flight would end everything. Judith was watching. The FAA was watching. One more launch, and they'd tear his license apart. But someone needed him. He opened the hangar, started the blades, and just as he pulled on the helmet, headlights lit up the yard. 3 SUVs, city inspectors, cameras, microphones, and Judith standing in front of them like she'd summoned it all. She held up a court order. Her voice was firm. "If you take off, you'll be arrested." Noah stepped toward her, the wind from the blades rising behind him. His words were quiet, but sharp enough to cut through metal. "If I don't take off, she dies." "That's not my responsibility," Judith replied. Noah looked her dead in the eye. "It should be." And then he climbed in. The rotors screamed, and behind him, the law prepared to do the one thing they thought he feared most: stop him. The rotor wash turned dust into thunder. City officials shouted through megaphones, but their words were swallowed by the scream of the engine. One officer moved forward, hand on his holster, hesitating. This wasn't a threat. This wasn't a fugitive. It was a man in uniform, seated in a flying ambulance, prepared to break the law for a stranger's life. Noah's voice crackled through the radio to the medic on board. "Confirmed coordinates. 8-minute flight. Prepare for hard landing." The skids lifted. A final gust of wind ripped through Judith's stack of court documents. They scattered like dry leaves. She screamed over the roar, "Stop him. He's endangering the public." But even the officer next to her didn't move. His eyes followed the helicopter as it vanished into the sky, swallowed by the last light of dusk. Inside the chopper, Noah's jaw clenched. The old instincts returned. Terrain scanning, fuel management, storm wind compensation. He flew through lightning like it was memory. And behind him, sirens didn't matter. Just time. 7 minutes later, he touched down on the roof of a darkened care home. No backup. No permission. Just instinct and oath. An elderly woman lay unconscious on a cot inside. Oxygen failing. Her daughter in tears. "Who are you?" Noah didn't answer. He just lifted the woman into the stretcher, nodded once, and they were gone. Back home, Judith was already in full damage control. Her phone rang nonstop. City Hall wanted statements. News crews wanted sound bites. The HOA board was splintering, half terrified, half in awe. She turned on the television. And there it was. Breaking news. Rogue air medic defies court order. Saves elderly woman in storm rescue. The footage played in slow motion. Noah carrying the woman. The chopper lifting off. The daughter sobbing into the camera. He wasn't supposed to be there, she cried. But he was. Judith muted the screen. Her hands trembled. Her empire, her rules were cracking. Hours later, Noah returned. No cameras. No crew. Just silence. Until he saw them. Neighbors. Line up across the street. Waiting. First Anna. Then her son. Then an older couple who'd never spoken a word to him before. One by one, they crossed the street. They didn't bring pies this time. They brought signatures. "We're calling for a full vote," Anna said. "You're not the problem here. You're the reason someone lived." Noah didn't respond. He didn't need to. Because that night, Judith's power broke. The vote passed. The HOA board collapsed. The court case was dropped under public pressure. And for the first time in years, the neighborhood felt like something else. Alive. Weeks later, a package arrived at Noah's door. No return address. Inside, a medal. The kind that doesn't come from governments. Just a handwritten note. "You got to her when no one else could. Thank you." He placed it beside the others, not above, not below. Just another reminder that even in silence, service still speaks. From across the fence, Eli waved. "Hey, mister. Are you going to fly again?" Noah smiled, just slightly. "Not unless someone needs it." And then he turned back to the chopper. One machine, one man, and a neighborhood that finally understood what it meant to live next to a lifeline. Like, share, and subscribe for the stories they try to silence. Because sometimes the rules aren't what save you. People are. Weeks passed, and calm returned to the neighborhood. The grass grew. Birds returned. The HOA office, once a place of tension and whispered complaints, stood locked and silent. But beneath the surface, something was stirring. Judith hadn't disappeared. She'd simply gone quiet. Too quiet. Noah kept flying, officially now. He worked directly with regional emergency services. His helicopter, newly certified as a disaster response unit, stood proudly in his backyard, no longer covered in tarps or shame. Neighbors stopped crossing the street to avoid him. Instead, they brought him coffee, questions, stories. Some just sat with him in silence. "You feel safe now," Anna said one morning, her voice light but distant. "You think she's finished?" Noah just raised an eyebrow. People like her never finish. They reload. Anna was right. The next strike didn't come in court. It came from the sky. Early one morning, Noah woke to the thump of rotors. But it wasn't his helicopter. It was larger, louder. A government chopper landed just beyond a ridge. Out stepped two men in suits. Not city, not HOA, federal. They approached him without introduction. One held a file. "Your license is being re-reviewed," the man said. "A formal investigation's been opened." For what? Irregular flight activity. And a complaint. From someone who claims you're operating under a false certification. Judith. She'd gone higher. Past city walls. Past local courts. She went federal. Noah's hands tightened at his sides. The official flipped the file open. "The problem isn't your record. It's your helicopter." Turns out, it was registered once under military-grade rescue ops, hardware not normally cleared for civilian use. But it wasn't illegal. Not yet. Still, the men walked through his yard, measuring, photographing, questioning. And then they saw the Red Cross logo on the tail. That alone raised alarms. "You can't just fly with that symbol," one agent said. "It represents protected humanitarian designation." "I fly to save lives," Noah replied. "Intentions don't override federal symbols." They left without a warrant, but with a promise. "We'll be back." That night, Noah sat in silence. The chopper beside him. There still. He thought of turning it in, of walking away. But then Anna showed up again, this time with a photo. It was taken on her phone. Blurry but clear enough. Judith, in a meeting with a man from a private security firm. "She's trying to buy the land next to yours," Anna said. "If she gets it, she can build a noise buffer. Restrict flight paths. Legally." Noah stared at the photo. "She won't stop until you're grounded." He stood slowly, walked to the edge of his yard, and stared across the empty field. "You ever been in a war you couldn't name?" he asked. Anna didn't answer. Because this wasn't about land anymore. It was about control. The next morning, a letter appeared in every neighbor's mailbox. Not from the HOA. From Noah. Inside was a single line. "If you ever need help, real help, you know where to find me." No return address. Just a red cross at the top corner. That afternoon, Judith returned with her lawyer. She walked the property line, smiled toward Noah's house, planted a new sign in the dirt. "Future site of community wellness complex." It was a lie. There was no permit. No approval. Just a bluff. But it was enough to send a message. This wasn't over. Noah stood at his window, watching. He didn't flinch. Because battles like this weren't won in noise. They were won in readiness. And his blades were always ready. The storm came at 3 a.m. No warning. No forecast. Just black skies, lashing rain, and wind sharp enough to rip fences from the earth. By 3:12, power was gone across the neighborhood. Sirens blared in the distance. Cell towers flickered, then fell silent. And at 3:19, the emergency call came in. A gas line had ruptured in the eastern hills. A landslide buried a cabin. 3 people trapped. Ambulance access blocked. Only one option left, airlift. Noah didn't hesitate. He stepped into the storm like it was an old friend. The helicopter, already prepped, came alive in the downpour. Blades slicing rain. Engine roaring to life. Anna met him at the edge of the driveway, soaked through, shaking. "I heard it on the scanner. Are you sure you can fly in this?" He looked at her with the calm of someone who's done it before, too many times to count. "I'm sure I can try." She reached into her jacket. A folded document sealed. What's this? Insurance. A signed petition. Every neighbor. Every household. Declaring the helicopter an essential community resource. It won't stop them, but it'll slow them down. Noah nodded once. Not for thanks. For acknowledgement. He lifted off into the black. The storm fought him at every turn. Wind sheared the side of the aircraft. Lightning streaked inches from blades. Instruments glitched. Radios buzzed. But he made it. He hovered over the wreckage, lowered the winch, brought them up one by one. The last person, a teenage girl, clung to him so tightly it felt like she was holding on to life itself. They returned just before dawn. As the sun cracked the horizon, emergency crews lit up the landing zone. News cameras zoomed in from blocks away. Neighbors poured into the street, blankets in hand, tears in their eyes. Judith stood on her porch, alone, watching. No cameras pointed at her. No microphones. No support. Just silence. The city arrived later that morning. Not with a citation, but with recognition. They'd seen the footage, the rescue, the petition. Noah's operation was granted full emergency status. Permanent. Judith's wellness center proposal? Denied. Her permits? Revoked. The final nail came in a simple letter from the mayor's office. We no longer recognize the current HOA board as a legitimate body of neighborhood governance. Effective immediately, all actions by said board are null and void. Judith didn't speak. She just stared at the paper in her hand, trembling. The power she clung to for years, erased in one sunrise. That evening, Noah returned to the field beside his house. Anna joined him. So did others. The teenage girl he rescued brought a hand-drawn picture, helicopter over a house, with the word hero in blue crayon. Noah didn't react much. He just knelt down, looked her in the eyes, and nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. And for the first time in a long time, he whispered back, "You're welcome." The neighborhood changed after that, not just in laws, but in heart. They planted a small flag near the hangar, a red cross made of metal. At its base, a plaque. To those who rise when others run. The blades still spin. The fuel stays ready. And every time thunder rolls over the hills, someone looks toward the sky, not in fear, but in hope. Because now they know. Help doesn't always come with sirens. Sometimes it comes with silence. And a promise to lift you, even when the world won't. Like, share, subscribe. Because the quiet heroes, they fly among us.